Hello and welcome to another video lesson. In this video lesson, we're going to cover nested if statements. So what this is you can have if statements inside other if statements, and that's what we call nesting. So I have some code up here. X is 2, y is 3. If x is less than 1, we're going to print x is less than 1. Now, what if from here I want to do something else? I can say if x less than, or if x, how about we say if x is 2, just because it's simpler. Print x is 2. Okay, so the key takeaway here is that I have some conditional statement, and then I have some code that's going to run underneath it, and then I have another conditional statement, and this is indented. Let me get rid of this so you can see this a little bit easier. So if, and then an indentation and another if. So if this is true, if x is less than 1, then this is going to run, and this is an evaluation. If x is 2, we're going to print x is 2. Okay, so will this ever run though? Right? X is less than 1, x is 2. Probably not. Let's go ahead and, I kind of thoughtlessly did that. If x is less than, how about 0.5, and then we'll say x is so small. So if x is less than 1, okay, and then we nest if x is less than 0.5, we're going to say x is so small. And right now x is 2, so this won't run, right? Because if x is 2 less than 2, no. So then what happens? None of the stuff underneath that conditional statement happened. So if the first condition isn't true, then we're definitely not going to go to the second condition, right? Because this has to be true for any code, even conditional statements underneath it. It needs to be true. Otherwise, none of this will get run. None of the indented code within will get run. And then another point that I wanted to make was that this indented if, right, because it belongs to this piece of code up here, it belongs to that if, is indented, and then the code underneath that is also indented because it belongs to this if up here. So these indentations, although they can be hard to keep track of visually, once you get used to this, it's a little bit easier. But this is why you want to keep code simple, because you don't want things to get unwieldy and hard to look at. And there are some coding practices that that you will learn later on in the course that can help with that. So, but we're not there yet. We're doing conditional statements right now, specifically nested if statements. So I'm going to run this code. Nothing happened. So instead, I'm actually going to make x equal to a really little number. I'm going to make it 0.1. And is 0.1 less than 1? Yes. So since that's true, then this is going to run. If x is less than 0.5, is 0.1 less than 0.5? Yes. So then it should print x is so small. So let's go ahead and try that out. And we get x is so small. If x is less than 1 is the first condition, and then the second condition is if x is less than 0.5. And we should try another piece of code. So let's say age equals 20. And then there's this other type of variable called a Boolean variable, and we could call it whatever we want. In this case, we're going to call it is student. I don't know why I couldn't type that right now. So is student, and we're going to set it equal to true. So we have a Boolean variable that can contain one of two values, true or false. And this value is going to be what's stored in this variable is student. Okay, so let's continue. If age is greater than or equal to 18, and let's see what else we can do. So if the age is greater than or equal to 18, if is student, what is going on? I don't know why that's so hard to type. I'm actually going to change this to camel casing because it's going to be easier for me to understand. Is student, and you could change yours to camel casing or not. I just think that for this example, I'm just going to have to do it like this. And I'm adapting, right? I'm making things more readable for myself. I'm the human. I'm the one who needs to be able to read it. And with camel casing, the two S's together was messing me up. So as long as I'm consistent, as long as I don't revert back to camel casing with the next variable or just stay consistent with snake casing, that's fine. So in this example, we'll use snake casing. If is student, and then you can say equals true. So you can say is student equal true. What do we want to say? Okay, so we want to print you are an adult student. Okay, so if the age is over 18 and is student is true, this Boolean variable is true, then we're going to print you are an adult student. Else, so for everything else, and notice how this else is lining up with this nested if, right? Because if I put it back here, then it would belong to this if on the outer if, right? So I want it to belong to this if, so it's going to line up perfectly flush with that if. And then I'm going to say else, print you are an adult, but not a student. Period. Okay. And then for everything else, so this else, I want it to belong to this if. So if the age is not greater than or equal to 18, I'm going to say print you are not an adult. And this else belongs to this outer if because they are lined up. So once again, these indentations are super important to keep track of. I'm going to clear history here. I'm going to go ahead and run this code so you can see what happens. So I run it and it prints you are an adult student. Okay, let's walk through this. So age equals 20 and is student equals true. If age greater than or equal to 18, so if 20 is age, is greater than or equal to 18, it is. If is student is true, is student is true, okay. So then whatever's underneath that, we're going to go to that. And it's a statement, print you are an adult student. Now, once this happens, none of this other stuff happens. There is a precedence that takes place. So once this part runs, once we find this if, this inner else is not going to get run. I said elf. This inner else is not going to get run. Instead, it's going to jump out and it's going to end the conditional statement. Something that I'm thinking of that I think might be a little bit confusing is, would you say that this else is going to get run if, so once we evaluate this, do we ever get here? And the answer is no, because we already accessed if here. And then remember, if there was nothing under here, like if there was just a statement here that said you are an adult, then we would not go to the else. but we're here, and then we go here, if student is true, okay. And then once we hit this, we're done with the conditional statement. And we were done with this outer conditional statement as soon as we got in. I hope this isn't confusing, but you can think about it like, you could think about it sequentially. So while you're going through your code, you watch what you have, and then in the following order, what happens next? And then in the following order, what would happen next? That's kind of something that you can tell yourself while you're working, and I think it might help with this. But I think more than that, practice is going to help with it. So play with this code. And then before I conclude, I wanted to show you something. I wanted to show you that this is student is the same thing as this. So is student true is the same thing as just saying is student, and that would evaluate to true. So I'll run it again so you can see it, but you are an adult student happens again. You don't have to write if is student equals true. You can just say if is student. And if this was false, then is student would be false. So we can say equals false, right? If student equals false, if or is not equal to false, then you are an adult student. I'm going to get rid of this. So now if age is greater than or equal to 18, and if student, and this is basically the same thing as saying is student true, you are an adult student. However, we have age equal to 20 and the person is not a student. So then this should run, right? And try to predict what you think will happen ahead of time while you're learning. So I'm going to run this. And then it says, you are an adult, but not a student. And so once it gets here, it's already done. So whatever comes below this, we're going to say print have a wonderful day. We're going to print have a wonderful day. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to run again. And then the code have a wonderful day gets run. Well, why is that? I thought that we said that once we complete one of these conditional statements, we're going to just jump out. That's true. We did. So this code is no longer indented underneath an if. It doesn't belong to any one of these. It's the rest of the code. It represents the rest of the code. So we can have print have a wonderful day. We can have our program do a whole bunch of other stuff, but it's not belonging to any one of these conditional statements. So when it bounces out, it goes to whatever is next. And in this case, print have a wonderful day is next. Okay. So that's going to cover it for this video lesson. So this was nested if statements, and this is called, if within an if is called nesting. You're going to hear this term applied to other things, but that's it for now. So thank you so much for listening. Practice up and have a wonderful day.